Short disclaimer up front, I'm generally really into all kinds of continuations of franchises, be it remakes or reboots, if a lot of heart and passion and creativity goes into making a story, and if it's not a complete and utter cash slash rating grab, but rather still here. I mean, obviously that should also be the case, like it should make sense in terms of business things, but at the same time it should also entertain and be of a certain kind of quality. And unfortunately, that's not really the case with every remake. Welcome back to Neverland, where, yes, television, as well as, the silver screen, film, cinema, is full of remakes and reboots at the moment. And, like I said, I'm not really against that. And I think it makes perfect sense from, like, a studio perspective. Because obviously, with a property or a story that people are somehow already familiar with, it makes sense that you would take that and just redo it because of certain factors that will then draw them to that story. So studios don't want to take risks and they make these remakes and reboots. Fair enough, that makes sense. The question is, what about animated remakes? Like remakes of television series, cartoons that, were released in the 90s, 80s, then had like a couple of seasons, maybe almost 100 or even hundreds episodes, and then were over, and now they're being remade 20 years later. What about them? Well, I think that's a bit more difficult and not as straightforward as your normal television, film, live action remake, and I want to tell you why. I understand that, no matter whether you're an executive of a type of studio that makes live action productions, or if you're an animation executive, you want to not take any risks, obviously. So since that has been working so well with like live action properties, people in animation were also like, hey, why don't we just kind of draw from that nostalgia factor? But I think there's a few things that people are not thinking about when, greenlighting these things. First of all, the kids from back then who would watch stuff from the 80s and 90s are not kids anymore. And unlike me and maybe some of you, they have grown out of watching cartoons. But that's really bad, because that is kind of the logic behind remaking something, rebooting something. So the question is, why remake a series from back then if the nostalgia factor is not there? Well, if we're being idealistic, we could say, well, wouldn't it be really great to just retell that story because it seems so timeless and the struggles from back then can still be applied today? Why not retell it? Sure. But then you have to really update it and adapt it to today's audiences. Not everyone is willing to do that, even if they do accept that and kind of want to adapt that story. Not all of them manage, because don't forget, even if you have a lot of like young animators now or maybe like assistants and everything, the like big people working on these things are like in their 40s, 50s. I think that is generally a problem today, but they don't 100% get what kids these days want. Because the gap is just too big at this point. So how do you adapt this old story to for a new generation? So the nostalgia factor is not given, meaning adults, then children, are not going to tune in again. The show is being changed anyway, but the kids are not even watching it, and the few fans remaining are like, hey, why are you ruining our show that we used to love so much? It's very difficult to get this right and make sure that it ticks all the boxes. To name one good example, we have Ducktales, and I think Ducktales is like a prime example of how to do a remake right. I, for instance, never really liked the original. I hated the show in the 80s, but now I absolutely love it. And I think it's because they've managed to like update all of these characters and their problems and their adventures so well. To name a more, maybe not so successful example, unfortunately, I would have to talk about the Hey Arnold Jungle Movie, and it's so sad because that film, that was obviously kind of more of a reboot than a remake, and like obviously a very short instance of a reboot because it was just the Jungle Movie, which they were gonna make back then already, but they never did because the first Hey Arnold movie didn't work financially. So now they finally made the Jungle Movie because Nickelodeon was like, hey, let us try this nostalgia thing and see if we can get anything out of it. But they couldn't. They made this amazing film. I mean, if you haven't seen the Jungle Movie, you've missed something. It still didn't work. Because, obviously, why would any kid today watch that? So on the one hand, we have Ducktales, a series that was kind of updated in a way that made sense for audiences, with characters that are still kind of on everyone's minds, because obviously, you know, Donald and his family, you know, connected to Mickey Mouse are not entirely gone or like entirely deleted from our consciousness, including kids. Whereas on the other hand, we have Hey Arnold, a film, a one-time thing where kids didn't really have the time to like keep following these characters and just kind of had to love them instantly without having any connection to them, and that was just not a good fit. That goes to show that really with reboots and remakes, please make them, but be careful which story you choose and be careful how you do it. Let me know in the comments if there's any reboot or remake that you're really excited about, or one that you crave, or one that where you're like, why is this even happening? As always, you can like the video if you liked it, you can subscribe if you want to see more of me and children's entertainment, you can follow me on Twitter or on Tumblr for regular updates on my videos and children's media in general, and thank you so much for watching. Bye!